And I think we're live. Cool. I'm looking at my Restream dashboard and we are going live. Let's just wait for everything to come up. Streaming monitor. Very nice. Oh, that's cool. I've never really done this like that, to watch Restream and see how it comes online. Okay, we're online with YouTube. Hello to anyone who's waiting. Thank you for being here. It's sending data to, it's still connecting to Twitch, it looks like right now, sending data. All right, all right.
Data. Hi everyone. If we're live,
we're live, but I'm showing the just the Robbie thumbnail right now until okay. I think
and we're muted.
Twitch came up. We're muted. Why are we muted?
Yep. Well, I was saying like you have the thumbnail up.
No, we're muted. They can hear us. They can hear us. Okay, so now we're gonna go to, and now they're gonna be able to see us in about a second. Hello, everybody. We are live. What up? Nice.
Hi, everyone.
You should be able to see what I'm seeing, Robbie, in the Zoom window. Cool. Let me start recording.
Recording
again.
in progress.
Cool. So we're recording on Zoom.
We just have we have your thumbnail.
Nice.
Is what I see.
Like it. Like it.
So lovely bit of graphic design that you put together.
For all of our friends watching, this is the legendary. I've been watching and reading this guy for ages and watching him on every show, DMing with him and subscribing to his newsletter, and I'm honored to have him here. This is Robbie Jaeger, extraordinaire writer from PolitiFi News, MCSC Network. Welcome, Robbie.
What's up, guys? It's finally actually nice being able to like talk to you like more than just like DM, because we have been actually communicating for a while now. You've been amazing supporting my work and stuff, especially since I started the Substack. So can't thank you enough for like what you, not only what you've done for me, but how just how you guys amplify other independent voices that don't get enough love out there, because there are plenty for sure.
Yeah.
Yep,
absolutely.
Yep.
And so this is Reef. Everybody knows Reef down here. I'm Indy. Just so everybody knows who's who. And those guys have the Zoom green boxes around them. You'll probably be able to see that. You won't see that for me, but you'll see my my meters jumping up and down, so you'll know who's talking. Again,
before we start,
before we start,
stuff to go get.
Reef has a surprise.
I want to toast the efforts of our man Robbie here. Robbie Jaeger definitely gets Jaeger right from the freezer.
Careful. Well, it's from the freezer. Okay, so at least there's that. God,
frozen shot glass. It's good to go, bro. I spent enough time to New Orleans to be perfectly fine.
When I get a PolitiFi email, I yell out, "Woo, it's another Jaeger bomb." So he's like,
"Yeah, I'm
dude."
How's that going down?
Oh, dude. Yeah. Like it doesn't even taste like Jaeger. That's
it's just the licorice taste. Completely, yeah.
Just sugar, alcohol. That's all that's left.
Oof. Yeah, no, man.
Yeah, it's an acquired taste, and I'm sure everyone has tried to get you to like it, because
look, I've had my share. Yeah, let's just say,
it's definitely a thing that's like,
I've got the only memories like I have, like just my memories, and I've got the deer head shot glass somewhere around here somewhere, just to like remember that I
remember
that I actually
all the nights that you can't like,
those nights like just sitting around like
Yep.
Yeah, no, man.
Yep.
Cool.
It's been a long, strange trip with the last name. So it's been like Jaeger for like the alcohol. Of course, throughout my entire life, it's been called, Jaeger or Jagger even. So like people have actually asked me if I'm related to Mick Jagger and or Chuck Jaeger. And in both cases, their names are spelled completely different. Chuck Jaeger is spelled with a Y. And Mick Jagger is, come on, obviously not.
I wish.
I wish.
Right.
I'm sorry.
I wish.
I'm not sure I'd be sitting here doing this right now, like if I had Uncle Mick. You know what I mean? Like I'm just gonna be real with you.
I definitely thought your work deserved a toast for that.
Well, I
Because
appreciate
every
that.
time I see your stuff, dude, it's like, oh yeah, this is gonna be good. Let me just scroll through and get all those dirty little details you put in there, and it's great. Your stuff on AOC, which should be covered way more, like all that stuff, if only the mainstream media knew how good your stuff was,
Well,
they'd post it. I wonder why they don't.
Well, some of
they
them do.
do. They
Do
they
they?
do.
Do they now?
They do.
Yeah,
Yes.
I've actually got. I mean, look, I'm not gonna like drop it in, but like, yeah, I do got a few blue checks that may or may not comb through my stuff on occasion, and
Yeah.
that's fine because I mean, honestly, like there are some good ones out there, and
Yeah.
I feel like I've got the respect of people I respect in
Well,
the
it's like
field,
there's
and
only
that's
I feel like the stuff you do, and like again all those the guys who used to be at the Intercept who are now at the Gray Zone, and all these little groups of investigative guys, right, who are willing to take the time to dive deep on a subject and focus on it and stuff and actually get some real journalism done. There's not many of you out there, right? There's only like
Not anymore.
like a handful. Yeah.
I
There
mean,
used to be a
yeah,
lot more.
I mean,
you
because
know
I think the space is different now. I mean, look, I mean, there's a few outlets out there that are still, really doing this stuff. Like Gray Zone was a great example.
Yeah.
Daily Poster is another one. They do great work over there. So I mean, but this type of journalism isn't really flashy. I know.
No.
I mean, Poster gets a lot of love for theirs, right? And but
Yeah.
so but you've got established journalists and talking head pundits over there, Sirota, right? He's anything he says, it's going to get run, right? So I mean, and that's good for them. I mean, at least he's using he's actually using his platform to at least
Yeah.
Expose
do some,
corruption.
follow the money stuff. He does some follow the money stuff. And like I said, that type of journalism isn't flashy, right? So I'm only really using them. Like you might see one of their stories go viral, but more often than not, the stuff that we do is just going to kind of get lost in the ether, by the
Either.
time when it's all said and done. Because let's just face it, there are more, you know, there are other stories out there that are more sensational. Let's just say that, right? Unless you're
Right.
like hitting the mother load with something, and it also really depends on your audience too. I mean, I like to think. I mean, I do my journalism for everyone, right? I try to. Obviously, I have my own opinions, right, and that's going to shine through. As much as I like to think that it won't, it eventually will. I try to save it for Twitter, right? I try to keep it out of
Right.
the journalism, but would it surprise me if there are some sections that are a little bit more slanted than maybe they should be? Of course there are. It's just human nature. Even though
Yeah.
I would say that I do try to go out of my way to peel those parts out. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of my audience are progressive, right? And as much as I really don't really know how I feel about that term, but I feel like they
Yeah.
would identify as that. And
Labels are bad. Okay.
right.
Like
Well, I mean, it's
yep.
just so malleable at this point, and the term progressive has been long tried to
Co-opted
be
and
co-opted.
yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
for more than a
So
year now.
it's for longer. For much more. Yeah, I mean,
Well,
Center
you've been
for
on that.
American Progress.
You were on that long
So I
before
mean,
me. Admittedly,
right.
I
Well,
had my awakening a little more than a year ago. Others had it
right.
earlier, specifically with regard to the big behemoth out of California that we don't even want to mention.
Well,
But
and but I would say this though, like if I were to report on, and I mean, trust me, I've got numerous document requests out right now for groups on the right and the left.
mhm.
But if I were to get my hands on, say, like, um, what was I'm trying to think, the America First Policy Institute, right? That was
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
the big dark money group that was behind America First Action, Trump's big super PAC. Or say I were to get my hands on One Nation's Karl Rove's big outfit that spent like an ungodly amount of money in the 2020 election. Like if I were to get my hands on some right wing group, right, it's going to get far more run than it would if I report on, say, Sunrise Movement or something like that. You know, so that has to take into account too, because I mean, look, let's just be for real. There's a lot of denial, I feel like, in leftist circles about what a lot of these groups actually are like, just technically, right? I mean, I had a discussion with somebody today, you know, because I mentioned that, you know, whenever it's a conservative 501c4, which is, you know, obviously a type of nonprofit organization or tax exempt organization, right? That don't have to disclose their donors, which where dark money comes from, right? Your organization is a 501c4. You don't have to disclose where your money or who gives you your money, which means that nobody knows where your money comes from. Ergo, you know, if you donate it to a political campaign or you use it for political purposes, that is political dark money. And that applies to organizations large and small. And I try to, and I feel like every dollar matters, because if you don't report on what's going on in your own backyard, nobody's going to take you seriously when you're yelling about what's going on across the street. And
Absolutely.
I feel like, so yeah, I can get I could just sit here and only look for right-wing groups. And it would probably be like beneficial to my subscriber count, or, you know, the amount of times my articles go viral or stuff. But I tend to look for things that, you know, sometimes, yeah, I know there's other guys out there that are working for the big boys that are looking for the same things I'm looking for. But a lot of times there's nobody that's going to touch the stuff I'm talking about. And I'm not saying that to like toot my own horn, but I'm saying that actually it's just like, it's more of a bad thing.
There's so much
because,
corruption, you can't keep up with it all. All of us can't.
well, it's not even that. It's just, there's just such a cult of personality. And look, as a journalist, you start to see this shine through in your work, right? Like I'll get, so I report on Nancy Pelosi's like stock trades and stuff, right? And then I get a bunch of now do Trumps, right, in my comment section, right? And then say I turn around and I talk about, I don't know, let's just say somebody, Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? I did some Marjorie Taylor Greene stuff on her Stark stuff. In my comments, it's now do Pelosi. And I'm like, I just did.
Right.
You know, like I do this for you. I don't do this for me. I could just look it up and not report it. Like, and you guys could maybe know about it, maybe never not. I mean, if it wasn't for me, and I mean, how many people do you think would know that how much money Sunrise Movement gets from like dark money sources like 1630? You know, how many people do you think would anybody have reported? Nobody's reported on it except for me.
I don't think they want to know. So I really think that they don't want anybody to really report on what they're doing on their side, but they want a light shown on the other side and all their corruption exposed, because they don't think that there's any corruption happening on the left, like you said, and clearly that's not what's happening out there. There's plenty of dark money funneling into the Democratic Party. It's not in the left, but the left has no real money and power in the United States.
Well, the left wouldn't accept that, in at least in my opinion. Like that's okay. Because look, whenever you bring it up to all of these so-called progressive organizations, like, okay, well, you say billionaires are bad and that dark money is bad, and super PACs are bad, and yet you check all three of these boxes nearly every single time. A lot of these progressive groups do. And so when you bring that up, you get the same thing. You get the same answer, ironically, that you got from Elizabeth Warren during the 2019 primaries, whenever she famously came out and, you know, railed against, I won't have a super PAC, I won't have this, and then literally got a $14 million billionaire boost from a pop-up super PAC that was just for her. And whenever this was brought up to Elizabeth Warren, her answer was, well, we can't just unilaterally disarm.
That's right. Unilaterally
disarm. And that's the same answer you get from progressive groups, because let's just face it, if it's conservative 501c, it's a dark money group. If it's a centrist 501c4 like Third Way or Center for American Progress, right, same thing. But if it's a progressive 501c4 such as Sunrise or you know, other like Center for Popular Democracy, People's Action, right? Like America Votes, if you want to count them, you don't necessarily have to, like Indivisible, the Working Family Party. Or here's a spoiler, guys: Working Families Party isn't really funded a whole lot by working families. I just wanted you to, I'm not sure if that's going to be a surprise to anybody, but the fact of the matter is, but whenever they're those 501c3s, we call those grassroots activists, right? And
yeah,
I think it's kind of disingenuous to do that. Like, we have to hold them not necessarily like just accountable, but like we have to hold ourselves like responsible for our beliefs, right? So if we believe dark money is bad, then I feel uncomfortable with endorsing a group that uses that practice to raise their money. Like, I just don't understand. And then again, like, why can't you just disclose your donors, your major donors, right? Like, the FEC would not require you to disclose your identity if you donated less than $200 over the course of a cycle, right?
yeah.
That would just go down as an unitemized disclosure. So or an anonymized donation. And I would say like the same rules should apply to nonprofits. Like, if you truly are being grassroots funded, small dollar donations, boom, fine, don't disclose. You shouldn't have to. But if you got whales, right? Because I'm looking at tax documents that are listing like 100 of some odd donors with no names, just amounts, and some of them are like $12 million, $2 million, $2 million. There's like 40 people that would donate like $15,000, $25,000, or whatever the case may be, with absolutely no identity. That's not good for our politics. It's not good for our country, because what it's doing is it's letting billionaires oftentimes, right, route their money through organizations that are protected with anonymity, and influence and just straight up influence our politics. And we can't match that, you and I, right? We don't have the capabilities to just throw $14 million at anything. With and that's the reason why super PACs are obviously bad, because they allow for the same thing. But at least in that case, super PACs have to tell you who their money or where their money's coming from. Dark money groups can donate to super PACs, but at least there's some kind of accountability there. But with these groups, there's absolutely no accountability. They can go out and say and do whatever they want, and nobody can say, hey, this is whose fault it is, or this is who's funding them, because they're like, we don't have to tell you, and they won't.
Yeah. So I'm wondering what your process is, right? Mm-hmm. For people out there in the space that's watching who want to do the things that you do, because we desperately need more people that do that. Right? Where do you start? Like, when you look at a story, or you're about to start one, what's your like first go-tos? Where are you going to look first? Well, right? How does your break that down?
Sure. So my process really starts with building on what I did before. And I know that's kind of like, so when I first started, really, it was, who are the great financial disclosure? Because, look, I mean, there is certain journalism that takes access to do, right? Like, I don't have any access. I don't have any DC connections. I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have any campaign connections, right? So, and I live in North Carolina, in the middle of North Carolina. So, I mean, I literally, there's not much going on here. Yeah. But I did find that, hey, there is a whole area of journalism that you can do from anywhere. And that's the public disclosure reporting. So, and this is why some of the reporting can be kind of slow sometimes, and then sometimes it could be a whole lot all at once, because public disclosures, obviously, from a variety of places, and usually a bureaucracy of some sort. It takes them time when they finally get around to uploading the documents onto their public database. Right. There are certain deadlines. So, again, that's why some of my activity can be sporadic. So there's a few things that I wake up in the morning and I check every single day. So let's just start there. Normally I would wake up, I would check to see the uploading of new stock disclosures from members of Congress. Okay. And see if there's anything new there. there usually is a couple of things. A lot of these congressmen and women, they do have like blind trusts, IRAs, 401ks, stuff like that. That's not, I'm not going to sit here and say it's irrelevant, but I'm not going to sit here and say it's always worth reporting on, because in the grand scheme of things and in reality, honestly, how much power do we have for our 401ks, right? It's different when we're talking about like trusts, because you have some say in that, right? So we got to kind of like, if you're involved in like a mutual fund or something like that. So some of that stuff can kind of get, because what you're looking for when you're looking for that, right, is obviously I think we can all three agree that I don't think that it's a good idea for elected officials to be able to own stock in the companies that they are charged with regulating. Sure. Okay.
I did see on TikTok that there was some people going around sharing like, right, if Nancy buys something, you buy. Like, just because
the problem with that is by the time you buy it, money's already been made.
Already gone,
so,
yeah.
So you're probably, because she doesn't have to disclose it until like 30 days or so later. And by then she's long since made her money.
And they're buying the options. They're also buying options based upon what they know is going to happen over the next 6 months, and legislation that hasn't happened yet, and the narratives that haven't happened yet. And you think they're not sitting at the dinner table?
Does anything close?
Hey,
she gets sent to Club Fed. So.
Hey, Paul, I had a conversation today with our folks over at Microsoft about some military funding and about a contract for the military. And Paul goes, "Ooh, maybe I'll buy some put options on Microsoft for 18 months from now." Like,
and again, how plausible is that? Extremely, correct? And I think that's the rightful reason why people have made such a stink about Pelosi in particular, because she's just so out in the open about it. Like, yeah, dude, you're putting in like these these strikes that you're putting, or these puts and strikes that you're calling out here. She's making a absolute killing. I think she made like $4 million off the Microsoft.
Yep, they made $5 million. But it's not her. It's that hedge fund that Paul and her husband are in, and it's not just them. He's a partner in it with a bunch of different people. But still,
of course,
they're wildly profiting off of insider knowledge. There's no doubt. I mean, they should. Honestly, that's the biggest, most blatant case of insider trading right now I've seen.
And nobody wants to talk about that. Like, it gets brought up briefly, and then of course, just like most scandals or whatever, or negative reporting that goes against mainstream Democrats, let's just be for real, guys. Most of the mainstream media is controlled by, at least it basically operates as an extension of the Democratic Party in a lot of ways, and especially the intelligence community for one, but Democratic Party in a lot of other ways too. So like, lots of negative stories are not going to get a lot of run on lots of major networks. You're going to get Fox. And that's the thing. And that's kind of the genius of the strategy. Like, really, if I'm going to be honest, is because if enough major or enough credible outlets who just all happen to be on the same side of the spectrum as far as politics goes, if they all independently discredit a single story, and all you have is, say, Fox News and or Newsmax covering said story, then it's really easy. The fake news labeling strategy works really
Hunter
well
Biden's laptop
with a lot of people that maybe aren't looking past surface level stuff. Because look, again, guys, not everybody does what we do and look as deep as we look. I think that's why we all kind of, at least in part, why we do what we do, is so that we can hopefully educate others, or at least interest others, or pique others' interest into looking below the surface on certain things. So when it comes to, like the insider trading stuff or the stock stuff, like, yes, you can find all that stuff. There's a wonderful website called politicalmoneyline.com. It updates every day. It updates the stock disclosures every day. It updates the FARA, the Foreign Agents Registration Act. It updates those filings every day. That can also be a great source. I'm not a great FARA guy, I'm not going to lie to you, because I feel like a lot of this goes on with I feel like a lot of this has to go on with again, like I said, like what I've learned before. So like over the course of reporting and doing this stuff, you learn names, like, you know, and you learn companies, you learn entities and law firms and consultancies, and then you see them pop up later, and it'll pop up again, and then you'll start to see correlations, right? And then the reporting becomes a little bit easier because now you start to know what you're looking for as far as what is it that I'm reporting on, right? So, you know, after I wake up and I check, you know, the stock disclosures, and then I check the FARA reports to see if there's any names or anything jumping out on that. I don't really spend a whole lot of time on that. Not gonna lie, there's other guys that are way better at that than me. I jump over to the U.S. Office of Governmental Ethics, the U.S. OGE. That is where members of the executive branch, cabinet members, right, stuff like that. Any White House executive, usually that has to be confirmed or appointed directly by the president, I believe. Usually has to file. I know all the members of the cabinet. Anybody that's got to be confirmed by the Senate has to file a financial disclosure, not just whenever they're nominated, but whenever they make a transaction, which quite honestly is far less often than members of Congress, because unlike members of Congress, a lot
They
of
don't have
times
money.
members of the well, but members of the oh yeah, they oh boy, no, but actually Biden's
Oh, they've
cabinet
got
is
money. Oh yeah.
rather oh yeah, they got lots of money. And but the thing is that executive branch officials are required to divest like 99% of the time, due to ethics waivers that they have to sign and ethics agreements. Now, don't get me wrong, they get to sign these little neat things called certificates of divestitures beforehand, that allow them to skate on the capital gains taxes, so they don't have to pay that. So there's that little nifty thing, and almost all of them
Of
wait.
course.
And
Yeah,
what
yeah.
about funneling it through the kids, like the Pelosi's have also done, the Bidens have also done? They also can use that as an entity in a vehicle. No?
Well,
Or is
you
there?
know, it's kind of no. I mean, a lot of times, like whenever John Kerry and his wife finally divested, whenever they got their position, they emptied out the kids' trusts too.
Wow.
I believe that, you know, I don't quote me on that because my memory is fuzzy. Because I did do some reporting on that, and I've seen to remember that yeah, like they pretty much emptied it out. Now a lot of times they move it over to you know, like index funds, right? Because it's a lot harder to say that you're you're playing favorites with one particular company whenever you just can disperse it throughout an entire sector,
Right. You're
right? You
betting
can
the
at least use
market. You're betting the market with
right.
an index fund, sure.
So, you know, well, of course it's good for me if the market goes up. It's good for everybody. You can say that and get away with it. And a lot of times I jump into like municipal bonds and stuff like that. So there's that. And then, you know, look, I mean, like, there's again, I'm just looking for updates every day. And I'll jump over to the FEC website. I have to refresh that like 100 times a day because stuff's constantly rolling in. I'm looking for, you know, look, candidate reports, super PAC reports, those are scheduled. Those are coming the 20th of every month, and then like the 15th of April, July, October, and January, right? So those are your quarterlies and your monthlies. And you know, those kind of those are more active during actual election years, right? But like 2021, yeah, there's been lots of stuff. Like Peter Thiel's been the big story so far, like $20 million jumped in like into two super PACs. You know, the Republicans, the Republican parties, in their like the NRCC, the NRSC, they're out raising Democrats so far this year. I'm not sure if many people are aware of that, and I'm not really sure exactly how significant that is. Actually, you know, it's an off year right now, but the Republican Party is not playing games. As far as fundraising goes, Democrats are getting a lot of money from the Joe Biden Victory Fund. You know, they're getting a lot of money through Nancy Pelosi's Victory Fund. That's what's carrying all the water for Democrats. Republicans are getting a lot of this more dispersed. I mean, they're still getting some big money, but not in chunks quite as large as what Democrats are. And you know, that's all stuff that you're able to pick up from navigating the FEC website. And again, this is all just stuff like as you go, you learn when things come out, you learn, how to navigate these filings. They're really not that difficult, once you kind of just put two and two together. I mean, they're not all spelled out, but they are, you can read them if you can just kind of just understand what you're looking at, right? And again, over time, that it just comes to you like that. So you know what you're looking for. You're looking for a big billionaire name. I mean, honestly, that's what you're looking for. In my case, is that whenever a new super PAC or a super PAC posts its quarterly donations, right? Um, First thing I'm doing, obviously I want to see how much they raised. But B, I'm going straight to finding out. I'm looking for names of corporation. I'm looking for names of obviously prominent mega donors. So if it's like Priorities USA, I'm looking for Dustin Moskovitz. I'm looking for Donald Sussman. I'm looking for George Soros. I'm looking for Carla Jurvetson. I'm looking for the big names. If it's a right wing
Miriam
super PAC.
Adelson, right, sure.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. Adelson and Griffin. Yeah. You know what I mean? And
yeah, Ken Griffin,
stuff like that.
he's been
Yeah.
doing a lot. Actually, so I figured while we're talking about looking at that, let's just throw up right now and do a little advertising for you and throw
Sure.
up PolitiFi right there so everybody sees what it is. Okay, everybody can go there. They can subscribe for free. There are some articles up there for free. It's a kick-ass Substack. It's at jaegers.substack.com. I had that up above Robbie's name, but we'll keep that up there so you can see the URL up at the top. I'm excited that you started this. I thought this is a great idea to report on the dirty dealings, but it's just a receptacle for you to really put out whenever you find anything, whether that's on the right, on the left, because the money follows both sides. It doesn't care which political party is in power. It's going to follow both sides. So that's really cool. And again, this is the most recent article that you just published the other day talking about Future Forward USA Action, okay?
Right.
Which is, again, dark money spending, and I believe this is spending on Democratic candidates. This is money going toward the quote unquote left, but we all know that the Democratic Party is anything but left. You can see I'm one of the likes, and everybody needs to go there and like that. Go and give Robbie some love, give Robbie some hearts. You can subscribe to PolitiFi. You can see I'm already subscribed, so now I can gift a subscription. I'm a founding member, as a matter of fact, but it's $50 for a year or $5 for a month. The minute that he said he was putting that out, I'm like, oh, that's great. I'm signing up, and I want to be a founding member. So again, Robbie digs into actual tax filings that these guys are submitting, and I love that you're doing that. All right. And again, we're just going to, I go through these, and this is one of the things I like to do on the Saturday night show is just actually show people what the article is, read a little bit and give a little commentary. And I figured having the guy who wrote the article here even better. But
Sure.
What Future Forward USA Action is, who comprises this organization? Do we even know? And then what they're doing.
We know a little. Yeah, so we know a little bit about Future Forward. So Future Forward USA is, like you said, at its core, a dark money group, a 501c4 based out of Silicon Valley and funded by, assumedly, some very wealthy Silicon Valley players. Obviously, they don't disclose their donors, but we do have some clues as to some of their relationships that they have out there. So I think it's easier to start with actually 2020 Future Forward USA, their PAC, their super PAC, late in the cycle, around October, they launched like $100 million pro Joe Biden advertising blitz.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I mean that put them that launched them into like top 3 biggest super PAC spenders for the entire cycle. It was crazy. Now they raised roughly $150 million during the 2020 cycle. Almost all of that came after June, which is significant whenever we get to this next part. But most of that money came from either like about $60 million came from Future Forward USA Action, their dark money group that is the basically the parent organization of that super PAC, right? The owners of that super PAC. They funded it themselves to the tune of $60 million. And then Facebook co-founder Dustin Moskovitz who in his own right has become a major Democratic power player as far as on the donation circuit. He donated roughly $45 million to Future Forward Super PAC as well. So between the foundation and Moskovitz, you've got 106 million of their 150 million that they raised, right? They also got some help from I think Eric Schmidt of Google, right? You got some help from 1630 Fund, who was just another massive dark money group who also spent roughly 60 million during the 2020 election. And they're actually going to be relevant here soon because it's something I just found out before we started doing this. So I actually got my hands on the tax returns for Future Forward for their fiscal year of 2019, which had not been publicly available yet. I did manage to get a source that that sent them to me, and there's no date. And here's the thing: fiscal years in the tax world, they're crazy. They're all over the place, quite honestly. Some are your straight January through December, some are June to July, or July to June, some even end in May, right? So it's kind of crazy. And there's no dates on this filing other than the date of which they received their only funding for whatever that period was, which was, I cannot see it, but I can't see it from what I'm looking at right here. Oh. But it was, I want to say it was in May. I don't have the filing up in front of me. I'm so sorry.
You're good.
But yeah, it was a $5 million donation of about 27,500 shares of Facebook stock.
Oh, I saw that. Yes,
now,
you did. I saw that up top. Yeah, 27,500 shares of Facebook, $5 billion on May 24th.
You can right click him, Robbie, and pin him, and it'll make him bigger.
But so it leads me to believe that since they're reporting a transaction, from May, right, that more than likely the fiscal year for this filing ends in June, which makes sense as to why you would wait until after your fiscal year ends to start loading up with money or start sending out a bunch of money, because it quite honestly buys you another year away from the election to have to disclose any of it. And that you're hoping by then nobody's paying attention anymore because we're on to a new election cycle. And so that's look, they only had like $5 million in the bank at the end of with this filing, right? So let's just say end of June 2020, they had $5 million in the bank. They wound up spending 60 million.
Jeez.
So the majority of that spending, or the majority of the money that they even got to spend in the first place, came after June, which means that almost the bulk of all of this information is going to be on the next year's filing. So we may have to wait a whole nother year before we find out exactly. It sucks, right? Because we may not get any answers for a long time. I did find out today I was sent some information that there was another dark money group that sent Future Forward about $6.7 million in October of 2020. This was found in documents that were reported by Axios earlier this year in June. And I don't think it was I think it was kind of probably slipped over, really. It wasn't really talked about, but that's the only other donor we know about these guys. These guys spent $140 million over their super PAC, spent over $140 million overall. They themselves spent over 60 in an election.
Yeah. And
we have no idea who funds them. And even the North Fund, like I mentioned, their entire budget is paid for by the 1630 Fund, which is just, nobody knows who funds them either.
And where'd the money go? Most of it, I would guess, is to television, print, advertising, and consultants.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. As far as their documented expenses on their tax report, most of it was they only spent $4 million before the deadline, and it was mostly on ads and stuff like that. They paid a pollster about 130 grand or something like that, just to do some probably some research on what they're going to be doing the ads about. They build themselves as like really data driven, again, because we're talking about a bunch of Silicon Valley guys, trying to use analytics and stuff like that. And they became one of the, like, again, they were one of the biggest forces of the 2020 super PAC race. And again, I've been trying to find anything I can on these guys for months now, and they are very tight-lipped. They don't respond to pretty much any kind of requests at all. And it was founded by a bunch of Obama, like ex-Obama data gurus. They worked on the Obama campaign, and they were really into like the data and analytics stuff, and they were like really just, I guess, doing some really groundbreaking work. They went over to work for this firm called Civis Analytics for a while until they broke off, and are now obviously have started Future Forward over the last couple of years. And I mean, again, nobody knows who's funding them. Hopefully, and this kind of brings me to like the next part of like, how do I do what I do, is that you can, the tax filing thing. There's two things. Like, you can go to the IRS website. They do have a tax exempt organization search where you can look up organizations either by their EIN, their employee identification number, or by their name, and it will give you the latest uploaded tax return. The only problem is that the IRS is going through a huge backlog right now for whatever reason, and that usually it takes about, honestly, it takes them already like a year to upload these filings in the first place. So say my organization's 2019 taxes won't be available, like they're due November 2019, right? Or I'm so sorry, my tax filings for 2019 that cover 2019 aren't due until like sometime in 2020, and they won't be available until after that.
Right.
So it takes forever to get these things public. But also ProPublica, and this is how the donors are found, right? Like, so okay, well, Robbie, if it's dark money, how do you know who donated to them? This method does not work for individuals, because individuals just write a check and walk away. But the thing about dark money, or the thing about these nonprofits, is that they may not have to disclose who gave them money, but they definitely have to disclose where they spend their money. And through the ProPublica full text search database, right, you can actually key in the name of an organization, and it will scan every document ProPublica has in their tax form database for that term, and it will return you every tax form with that term in the form. Right now, there are a few exceptions to this, right? It's really useful. So individuals you won't be able to find, but institutions, other nonprofits, you will be able to find, unless the method of their tax return, right, was not filed electronically. Instead, it was filed just by being straight scanned or faxed, right? And with that case, obviously the algorithm won't be able to look through it, because it's not like a text document, if that makes any sense, right? It's just a faxed image. I can't hear you, Reef.
Yep.
It had to be converted or whatever, right?
Say what now?
It had to be converted or
right. It would have to be converted over into like at least a PDF format or something. Or I mean, even it's probably something a little better than that. Something that at least you can alter, right? Unless it's other, because like Rokana filed his financial disclosures this way. It's like he scans them and then puts them in a fax machine and then faxes and then goes. It's the muddiest, worst, like oldest look I've ever seen, and they're like 100 pages long, because he's got like so much like stuff in his trust account. So like, I know that he does that because he hates reporters like me. I'm almost positive he might not ever admit it, but like, I mean, but unless you're doing it like, again, unless it's like a nice clean PDF, and a lot of them are, a lot of the newer ones are, that are coming out. So the database is constantly growing. And like, again, like there was 52 results for Sunrise Movement as of like August, right? Mid-September, I loaded up. Now there's 102. So now I got a whole bunch more data to sift through. You never really know when these things are going to come, so you got to check them every single day. But yes, that's how you find certain things. Like Open Society Soros stuff, he's one of the guys that just faxes his stuff through, right? He doesn't, so you can't like really search through his with a find tool. But what you can do is go to his website and search the grant database, and that'll tell you everything you need to know. So like there's alternate methods. You can do the same thing with Bill Gates. You can do the same thing with Pierre Omidyar's Democracy Fund. You can do the same thing with the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. Always just go to the site. The Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors, I believe, also. A lot of these sites have grant databases that, look, if you can't get the actual tax form, you may be able to find something on the website. You never know. But again, I think that that's important really because a lot of these groups, especially on the left, build themselves as some like their grassroots, right? And whenever I say that something is grassroots, what does that make you think?
Well, that it's user funded and that
by,
by people who have no money, but grassroots doesn't mean no money. We know that.
Average lower donation, right?
Right.
Grandma's with $5, right?
Well, I mean, the grassroots, yeah. I mean, normal, average Joe, people that middle class and below, lower class people, people that can't afford to give millions of dollars, like grassroots. And that's the whole point of it, is because like these are the people that are touching the grass where I live, right? They're not the people in the penthouse. Right. And time again, the people in the penthouse are the ones giving these grassroots organizations a large bulk of their funding. But the organizations never talk about it. And I find that to be quite, I mean, it's offensive. And I say that because a lot of people donate to these groups because they trust these groups, because they don't think these groups take money from the billionaires that they rail against constantly, that are spending millions of dollars annually in our elections, trying to do nothing other than influence the politicians and the messaging surrounding them. And, whenever you don't tell you're trying to get a bunch of young people that really genuinely want change, right?
Yeah.
You're scamming them. And that's the way I feel sometimes, is because like I just like be honest with the people that you want money from, right? Like, don't sit here and say that we're against billionaires and we're against the establishment and this, that, and the third. Like somebody was trying to tell me that, that there was a huge difference between like a right-wing group like like Americans for Prosperity and Sunrise Movement. And I'm fundamentally, there's no difference. Not to me. Neither one of them disclose their donors. Both of them spend on election ads like Super PAC, right? They do mailers, they do texting, they do get out the vote, they knock doors, right? And they're both funded by billionaires. There's only two differences. The first one is the amount. Yeah, you can obviously say that Americans for Prosperity, a much larger organization, a much older organization, spends a lot more than Sunrise Movement, who's probably worth about 10 million in 2019. But as far as we know from the whistleblower that left Sunrise Movement earlier this year, I'm not sure if you guys caught that. He made the comment that Sunrise Movement gets like a monthly Skype call with the White House. So you can tell me who's got more influence, really. And, and then of course the task forces, right? And all that kind of stuff. So money isn't really everything either. It's connections as well. And, the point of it is that fundamentally there is really no difference. Dark money is dark money is dark money. And, it's all quite the same. And it's not good that, especially in a lot of these progressive circles, is that it's excused. Like, again, like I said, the first difference, you can talk about the amounts that they spend and call that a difference. Fine.
Right. Unilateral disarmament, right?
But the only other difference is the excuses that we make to justify it. Because
this is a problem with
progressive,
with a lot of charities and nonprofits, right? Just the disclosure of money and who it's connected to and who funds things and stuff like that. You can look at a bunch of the top charities, and they don't really do the things that it says on the tin, because there's just too much money flying around those things to actually be useful, right? But
And
Yeah,
their write-offs for the billionaires on top of it, which then use these things as
Right.
vehicles for their own influence, but doing it through a charitable lens, which really it's
Yeah.
gross in every way, shape, and form. Now,
Makes it even worse.
wasn't Dustin Moskovitz also donating to the super PAC that the PAC that funds the Intercept? Am I correct with that, or is that exclusively Pierre? I thought I saw Dustin's name on there.
Okay. So you're talking about not Super PAC, the organization, the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, right? Okay. So Moskovitz has a nonprofit. Now, I'm not exactly sure the exact structure of this relationship. I do know that Dustin Moskovitz and his wife Carrie Tuna have a nonprofit called Good Ventures, which on their tax forms is in the care of the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. So there is some link. Silicon Valley Community Foundation does get funds from Moskovitz, right? How much? Unknown, right? The Silicon Valley Community Foundation is a large, multi-billion-dollar, essentially it's a donor-advised fund for Silicon Valley billionaires, right? They make these accounts, they deposit their millions or whatever it is, and then they disperse these millions to nonprofits through the community foundation, right? So again, that's just an extra layer because the donation is going to go in the name of the donor advised fund. So you can send $5 million to someone or a charity without having to like write a check. You can donate 5 million to your donor advised fund, get your tax write-off immediately, but you don't have to actually donate the money to the charity until whenever you feel like it. So eventually you do feel like it and you donate it to say First Look Media. That donation is going to come in the form of the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. It's not going to have your name on it. So it just gives you another layer of protection as far as your identity goes. So that being said, we do know that Moskovitz has a substantial relationship to the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. Now, how much money he's actually putting into it, that's unknown. But yeah, Silicon Valley Community Foundation, yes, that's where First Look Media, Pierre Omidyar's parent organization of the Intercept, so to speak, his nonprofit, or one of them, pretty much gets all of their funding through the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. Again,
it's like 50 million. It was like 50 some odd million last year. Is that correct?
Oh, no. It was like 26.
That was a 2-year filing, right?
Yeah, it's like, again, that's something I think I was like back in April, so I'm not exactly sure. We'll be getting new numbers relatively soon, because again, we're getting up to that point to where 2020 taxes are going to be publicly available late October, mid-November of this year, right? It takes about a whole year to get them out there, so we'll get updated numbers on that. But again, yeah, I mean, it's just a bunch of, like, again, even the Intercept, right? And look, I defer to the man that founded it or co-founded it, that the money isn't the problem. You know, who am I to say otherwise, right? But I still feel like it's relevant to report on it. So whether or not that's actually what the problem is with the Intercept right now, like, again, Greenwald himself has said no. Sure. I still think it's relevant to their readers to know that they are asking you for money when they have plenty of it. You could stop donating today. The Intercept is not going to go anywhere. And, you know, that's just the long and short of it.
It's only so they can call themselves independent. I mean, that's really the whole thing. It's a marketing gimmick. It's really kind of gross. I know that even Ryan Grim came out and said it. Well, we would have to give up our status as an independent news organization. Yes, you would.
That means they'd have to give up their tax exempt status. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is what makes the whole thing possible. Yep. So it's not a write-off.
Which is why, like, again, like I've learned from journalists on how to do stuff, organizations on how not to do stuff. Like, you know, I feel like them constantly kind of skirting around the issue of funding, it lessens their, you know, it just lessens their impact some, at least for me personally. I mean, I just wish that they would just come out and say like, okay, dude, we're not truly independent. I mean, but then they'd probably say, well, who the hell is, right? I mean, I guess, but that's why I want to build a model. Look, the crowdfunding model for independent media, it works. I mean, I know we're all in competition with each other and we're all fighting, not really fighting, but to be honest with you, like we're making media for people that have the same budget that we do, right?
Yep.
I mean, and while so many of us are struggling to, do that because we're not catering to the deep pocketed, like we don't have any big millionaires or billionaires funding us, right? We don't have, I don't have a corporate sponsor, I don't have, and I don't want any, right? I made the comment the other day, the Intercept could not literally not pay me enough to work there.
Right.
And it's just because like I want when people eventually if this really does take off and a few years from now I've made a career out of this, I want at least people to look at me as at least he tried to stay independent, like what independent as is supposed to be, right? Funded by the people that take in my content, and that's it, period.
Speaking of
I don't
which,
want
you mentioned doing this full time. Like me, I know that you also have a full-time job and a family, and finding the balance and the time. Your family's got to be incredible. Your wife must be an absolute saint. To share you with the rest of the community, just like mine is. And by the way, hi to Nicole. Nicole's a volunteer. She works with IndieLeft, and she does all of our Instagram postings. She's here on the stream, so I just want to say hi to her. But just managing that balance, and how do you manage a full-time job where you have to be somewhere on site, but you're checking these things? How much of it, do you have automation coming at you? Are you letting like bots and emails and that stuff help you as well?
Well, look, I mean, emails help. Emails definitely do. FEC in general, the Federal Election Commission, they have a notify system where you can basically get email anytime a PAC or candidate committee gets an updated filing. You can actually just customize your own list of committees to anytime they get any kind of new filing released to the FEC. You'll get an email, boom, right there, and you can just link right to it. Yeah, all of this, that's quality of life stuff. I feel like if you're going to start doing this, if you're going to start doing the campaign finance stuff, learning how to navigate the FEC website is number one, right? But also quality of life while you're there. Make that email, get on that email list, get those notifications. Now look, I mean, a lot of the public, like now, like eventually now you hit the wall where all the stuff from 2018 taxes, 2019 taxes, somebody's gotten to it, right? It's all been reported, right? So now you're just waiting, and that's where it kind of you start trying to cultivate sources, right? So you're sending out emails like, hey, maybe if I just ask, I can get it a little bit early, right? In the case where I've been covering the Colonial pipeline spill, that's where really, I mean, a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about, that's stuff I can check periodically. It takes me 5 minutes. I've got them all bookmarked as websites. It's just a few clicks, boom, it loads. I see what's there, nothing new. Move on to the next one, boom, boom, boom. If there is something there, I kind of set it to the side. All right, I'll work on that when I get home from work because I got like 5 minutes. I'll go outside for a minute, scroll through, check the emails, check text messages, and I'm back in there. Maybe like 10 minutes. But I can still do a little bit of work in 10 minutes. At least do a little bit of research. And then eventually come back to it and then flesh it out and see if there's really anything there to write about. With the Colonial pipeline stuff, that involves talking to a bureaucracy, right? I'm talking to people that work for the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. I'm talking or emailing with people that are working for the U.S. Department of Transportation's Pipeline and Hazardous Safety Materials Administration. I'm trying to get in contact with people from Colonial Pipeline. It can get a little bit overwhelming again, like because then it's like, okay, I'm not getting the information I need, so now I've got to learn how to navigate the filing section of these agencies as well.
Yeah.
Like not just like learning how to do the FEC. Now I got to learn how to navigate the PHMSA's filing database and what all these numbers mean and what the hell is this, like, so I mean, and again, like I've had to teach myself pretty much everything other than the stuff like obviously I'm absorbing like a sponge from like like the Ken Vogels of the world, who's like one of the greatest campaign finance guys, like Lachlan Marquet over at Axiom or Axios, I should say. Again, you look at other journalists and you learn how to do it. You have to learn from the greats. You know what I mean? Like just like I feel like in any profession, if you want to get really good, there are people that blaze that trail already before you, and there's a reason why they're legends, or really good or really successful. And I feel you have to you got to learn from them, like, because there's things that they are doing that are going to help you. And again, like it could just be as simple as, the first time I saw somebody report on something from a tax document. Well, how the hell did you find that?
Right.
Oh, and then they linked it like, oh, okay, so I can just look on this website and find all of this, and then I just start typing in shit. I gotta
people
find
don't
out,
even
okay,
realize
what's
it's
this,
available.
what's this, what's and boom. I mean, and well, it's available in a lot of cases. It's just the problem. The biggest obstacle people have is that they just simply don't know where to look, because while all the information is public, it's not really spelled out, and these agencies are not holding your hand, showing you where their trove of documents are. A lot of times, it's tucked away nice and tight somewhere in the the footer of the website, like a little fine print link for financials or something, or search this or whatever, and you're like, I didn't even know this was here, and then you find it and it's trove of a bunch of stuff, ironically, that a lot of the reporters probably have already seen. But now that you know that it's there, your job as a journalist becomes so much easier, because now I can just check back every time, every day if I want, if it's updated daily. Like again, November, I'm gonna, for the first time, gonna be able to really dig through labor unions for the first time. I missed them last year, but once I found out the National Education Association dropped $17 million into a dark money group that was spending millions in the 2020 election. I was like, that just blew my mind. I was like, okay, so that's just one more thing that we've got to look into now, is the role that labor unions are playing in all of this. And those will be out in November. So that's something to look forward to. Like, and again, like, I find this stuff like so interesting, and I realize it that I talk on and on about it, and I probably bore half the people to death because it's just like a bunch of numbers and this, that, and the third. But what it all boils down to, and the reason why I find it important, I guess, to sum it up, is just that money makes the world go round, right? It not just the world, but our country, especially our politicians. Everybody knows this. If you can't just admit this out loud, that one simple truth, I feel like you're deluding yourself. I mean, everything shakes because of the money, and it's a constant battle of the wealthy trying to use their money for any advantage that they can, for influence, right? Whether it's, I'm going to be a top donor to this politician, or I'm going to start a super PAC and fund this and support this politician with millions that way, or I'm going to start a nonprofit and funnel it to this, that, and a third. There is a small portion of American citizens, the 1% of us, right, that are constantly fighting amongst themselves for financial control over our politicians. And not just that, but the messaging, right? I feel like that's a huge thing. The narrative that you see around politics in America, in large part, are funded by the same people that are funding the politicians that they're talking about. It's just one giant PR battle, and it's all, it all boils down to money in politics. No other reform will be possible. No other lasting reform will be possible. Not Medicare for all, not student debt forgiveness, not peace overseas, the ending of the war machine, whatever, however you want to put it. None of this is going to be possible until campaign finance reform comes first.
Yeah,
because until you get this,
we got to get that dark money out. I mean,
until you get the special interests out, they won't listen to us. They're going to be listening to them. It's just that simple.
We got to stop the bribery. I mean, it's legalized bribery. The bottom line. So I want to be respectful. I know you told me you only had a little more, 45 minutes, an hour. We've already gone over an hour. If you got a few more minutes, I appreciate it. I definitely want to have you back also. But Reef, look like you had another question. What go ahead.
Yeah. I was just wondering. Yeah, I was just wondering how much of your like journalism comes from things like sources bring to you, right? And like where would they bring you those things, safely and.
Well, I don't. Well, so okay. Most of the journalism I've done is stuff that I have found. I do have some people that may point me in the right direction sometimes, as far as, hey, did you see this? Or have you looked at this today? Stuff like that. I feel like right now, and I'm just going to be quite honestly, like if we were talking about some like super sensitive, like super sensitive material. I would probably go through like a complete different channel that I don't even really like. I don't have like a signal or anything like that.
Telegram or something like that.
Yeah, but that would be a way that I would just go for that, right? Like if somebody were to email me, like Proton Mail is good, it's decrypted, is good, but again, I feel like people would be more comfortable with an alternate way. I haven't had that scenario happen yet. So like if that somebody were to, hey, I've got something that I really, I would probably I would make that happen that way.
And reach out to your Twitter and just try to connect directly through there, right?
And just say, hey, like, like there's something that I want to show you or I want to send to you. I don't feel comfortable like talking through these channels.
Do you want to meet at?
Well, exactly. Well, I mean, look, well, but a lot of things is like, especially like say if there's anybody that happens to work at Colonial Pipeline out there and you're watching and you have a story to tell about your practices, I would love to hear from you. But that being said, is that a lot of people might be scared to talk about that stuff over, typical channels, because I mean you're dealing with a multi-million-dollar oil company. You're dealing with your employment. Like a lot of these, like a lot of times people won't speak out. Like I know that there's lots of progressives that work at these dark money groups that I cover, that are probably completely against how they operate and the people that are taking money from, that are afraid to speak up because not only would they more than likely lose their jobs, right? Obviously, but all these groups are connected. Sunrise, Way to Win, Working Families, like they're all part of the same circle. And if you get fired from one, blackballed from one, you'll never get another job in the industry again, right? And it's just that simple. And that's why like people have to go so like painstakingly long without really knowing any of this stuff. But like I do work for tips, right? So if anybody has anything that they want to send me, like I'm always available. I mean, look, usually things that I'm covering, tax documents, stuff like that, aren't so sensitive that, sending me something from an anonymous Twitter account or emailing it to me wouldn't suffice. If I feel like I was dealing with some like WikiLeaks level shit, you know what I mean? Then that's a different story. So like that's I would just say that, like, definitely if you got something crazy, like some crazy shit like that, you can definitely come to me, but just like check with me first,
like whisper
don't send it through Twitter DM for sure, because Jack doesn't need to see that.
Do that.
Make sure you guys got like your code names and your phrases ready, and
well, look, before I go, I mean, I know I've probably been all over the place with what I've been talking about. But if there are anybody, if there are any journalists out there or people that want to do what I do, maybe hell, you might be better at it than me. But the best thing I can do is just tell you, learn your websites, right? Find your FEC, your SEC, your the Office of Government Ethics. Find the clerk of the House, the clerk of the Senate. That's where you get your financial disclosures, right? Learn the IRS website, learn the labor union websites, right? Like there's lots of databases that you need to learn how to navigate and stuff like that. That's your best friend, because that's the learning curve. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Me and Indy have been thinking about trying to pull together, an independent AP of sorts that's a la carte funded, and you essentially, like Robbie, if you were working with us, it would be you get a cut of that from a direct person who can send you on a path to look down a particular investigation, right?
Right.
And you can figure out pricing between each other or whatever, right? And the thing is that we need the journalists and the people to teach people willing to be journalists and stuff like that, which I mean, I'm sure I can send them over to you, but
I mean, yeah, I've got no problem with it, because like to me, like I feel like, I mean, I've examined this indie journalism space for like I've been one of the quiet ones, right? Like I have slowly built up, a nice, base of supporters, which I'm grateful for. But like my colleagues, right? Like Nico, Fee and Pasta, and even to an extent, Steve over at Slow News Day, and they've like their audiences have exploded, right?
Yeah.
And and I see so often that our space is full of people constantly competing with one another. When I feel like, to a certain extent, I understand that we're all we're all fighting for the same cut of the pie. Like, again, those of us that are at least trying to make this as a career to support your family, you have to carve out, right, your own little section there. But also, I feel like as a whole, it would be so much better if we could get more cooperation. The only problem is now is that everybody is just so wrecked from 2020 and 2019, the primaries, that I mean, we're in a tough spot, quite honestly. I mean, obviously IT stuff, right? And you would expect that that would have been something everybody could band together against. Like, hey, we're the new independent media. We don't need these guys anymore. We can do it better. We can actually be truly independent. We can all band together, and we can make corporate media obsolete, because if everybody's watching YouTube, reading sub news, MSNBC, CNN are irrelevant now.
Part of the problem with that right now, to me, is that there's a lot of like commentary, channels that are great and have great commentary, but the sources they're getting stuff from is still, we only can try, like, we're getting it from AP or like Common Dreams, or like we're getting these little segments of and stuff from you, from the investigative side of the independent world, right? We get some lovely nuggets from you guys that we'll definitely take, but a lot of it we don't have the journalists out there in the field doing it.
Well, that's where I come in.
To get the information we need.
And that's where I come in. I find the Robbie Jaegers. I find the Lauren Elizabeths and the Judd Legooms. There are people out there doing this. They're not getting a big enough voice, and they're being suppressed by the algorithm, and they're being buried. And they need a home.
Look, and look, we're not going to agree with our contemporaries 100% of the time. We're just not, and we have to also understand that there's like the biggest rift, right? And it would be easy for me to boil it down to Jimmy Dore, right? But that's not at all what it is. It's the people.
He froze.
Oh, he froze. Come back. Come back, Robbie. They're suppressing his internet. Oh no.
This is what happens.
His anger.
Oh, he's back. You're back.
I think
your
back.
Internet.
Yeah, you froze for a minute.
A little bit.
Okay, so I would just quickly say that, like, again, it's not all about, like, it would be easy for me to say this is all about Jimmy Dore, right? But nowhere even close. It would be like Jimmy Dore he's angry, and and he speaks for a lot of people that feel the same way as he does. Yelling at a section of Democrats, aka the progressives, the Justice Dems, whatever you want to call them, look, they have been a massive disappointment. But the problem is that the other half of the indie space that we occupy is also occupied by people that came from the Bernie camp, the Bernie wing, right? They came up in the indie space covering Bernie Sanders, pushing Bernie Sanders. That was their band, right? And so now what do you do? I mean, but what do you do now? I mean, you can either stay authentic to yourself, right? And call things and be honest with your audience, or you can be authentic to your brand and deviate from what it was that got you started. Like, it's more beneficial to be like, hey man, like, I can't come on here. I used to think Tulsi Gabbard was good, right? I can't come on here and really defend that shit anymore, now, and I never would, and I never will. But you have to be able to say that out loud. You have to be able to, like, look in, like, you just have to be able to say, hey, this was how I felt in the past. Things have happened. Things have changed.
Bernie
And
caved.
now
It
we
broke.
have to move
Yeah,
forward in a
Bernie
different
caved.
direction.
Exactly. Bernie caved. It broke our hearts.
It is
We have
what
to
it
figure out
is.
what now. So he's not going to save us.
Exactly.
It's on us to save us. So what are we going to do? That's why I built this vehicle. I built this vehicle to amplify independent media, because I realized that the algorithm and the suppression is one of the big problems, and there was no central place to find all of that, other than TYT was trying to build that, but they were also gatekeeping at the same time, where I wanted to build something that was a lot more open source type of thing that would give everybody a real opportunity to be seen and to be heard. And again,
well, yeah, and it's also like a discussion. Like, we can't just close off the discussion. I mean, these problems are unless we come to the table with honest discussion, and not just be like, oh, you hung out with so and so sometime, one time, like whatever, or you interviewed somebody I don't like a day ago or a month ago,
dinner with Putin,
and so anything you ever said is just completely from henceforth. And that's the mentality that shit, man. We got to work together. That's why I'm really glad that what's happening here is happening. I'm glad that you guys have got this show, and that and when this aggregation, that he's stuck with it. Because quite honestly, I mean, I was kind of surprised whenever it first started. I was like, okay, I wonder,
we still need,
this is going to work on it, but it
takes a lot of knowledge and effort, and we still need web devs who are knowledgeable in multiple different platforms, and like to get the exact kind of things that we need, we have to have access to people who normally would be paid a living wage for doing what they do, and none of us have the funds to be able to pay people what they're worth right now,
right. Oh yeah.
So but anyway, I think we're